All right, guys, we're going to start every episode with scripture. So let's just jump right in. 3 John 2. Okay. So 3 John, remember where that's at. Go to your spiritual kickoff if you missed it, because I unpacked 3 John 2, and including where to find it. It's at the back of your Bible. It's 2 back from Revelation. Okay. So go there. Beloved, I pray that in all respects you may prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. So guys, this is going to be a fun episode right here today, because who I have with me is none other than Mr. Dan Miller. I'm going to tell you what, Dan, he's the author of a New York Times best-selling book, 48 Days to the Work You Love. He has over 140,000 people subscribe to his newsletter. This is unreal, right? His 48 Days podcast ranks in the top 1% of all podcasts. His 48 Days Eagles.com community is viewed as an example around the world for those seeking to find or create the work they love. Guys, I'm going to let you know, I'm a member of that community. One of our previous guests, Jeff Long, he's a member of that community. Another, Mike McGreevy, he's a member of that community. Dan does phenomenal things, and the stuff he's putting together is unreal. He's been married to his wife, Joanne, for over 54 years. So they have 3 grown children, 17 grandchildren, and they live in their little version of paradise in Osprey, Florida. So I'll tell you what, Dan, he's just the most genuine man you want to meet. When I met with him, I was a little bit starstruck. Hey, I'm actually talking to you. I mean, he's coached people all over the world, just phenomenal businessman. But how just to the heart he was so genuine. How can I help you? How can I serve you? Hey, let's schedule this podcast. Let's get this done, because this may help your listeners. And guys, we're going to be talking about something that's important in my heart, but it may be important to you guys as well. Ministry to monetization. Now, so many guys think that from a ministry standpoint, if you're doing ministry work, you got to do it for free. Well, no, there's opportunities. And ministry doesn't necessarily always mean mission work. There's different ways. And Dan's going to open our eyes, going to give us some insight. He's going to really going to peel back some layers of the onion that's going to help us grow in our walk to be the Christian leaders we're predestined to be. So I'm not going to hold him back from me any longer, guys. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. Let's get into it. Dan, welcome to the Line Within Us. How you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing excellent. As every day is, just another wonderful day.
It is. It's a beautiful day here. We're recording in July. I'm excited to have you. I still can't believe that we're talking. So our listeners, maybe to start us off, Dan, share with our listeners a little bit about your story, because I know when I heard it, it blew me away. And I'd love for you to take this time to share it with them.
Sure. I'll give you a real quick version here. I grew up as a poor farm kid. My dad was bivocational, pastored a little tiny church of about 40 people, but eked out a living as a farmer just to keep food on the table, just doing what was responsible, doing what was right. There was no discussions in our home about doing things you enjoyed. You did what was right and what was responsible. That was it. And don't expect much here, because we're going to get our rewards someday in glory, but not here. Right. So I grew up with that kind of home, and very quickly determined, I think I had too much time out in the fields, Chris, to think and dream and imagine. And I just imagined things that were beyond what I was seeing there, things that were beyond the life that seemed to be kind of destined for me. And when I was about 13 years old, I got a hold of the little audio recording, The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale.
Okay.
And I talked about we become what we think about. Now, that's not a new concept. I mean, we see that in the Bible. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. But it somehow just really resonated with me. And I thought, would it be possible for me as a poor Ohio farm kid to change the trajectory of my life by just controlling what I think about? It became a foundational principle for me then, and continues to be so today. And I started dreaming, imagining things that were beyond what we had there. And doors just seemed to keep opening for me. So I went to college as a socially acceptable way to escape the farm, really, not because I had career plans as a result of college. I've always been an entrepreneur, always just seen opportunities to generate income, and I followed that on and on and on. But went to college, got married, went back to got more degrees, but have always been an entrepreneur. And then when I was in my mid-40s, we started teaching a Sunday school class. My wife and I did at our church on career transitions. I said, sure, I'll be happy to do that. I always had worked with people, had my master's degree in clinical psychology at that point, and I was always used to working with people, kind of helping them find clear direction. And that little class just exploded. And I thought I'd have the kids who are deciding what to major in college in there, or maybe somebody 23 years old, who is already out of school and realized it wasn't as easy as they thought. They didn't have the white picket fence and Mercedes in the driveway like they thought. And they're thinking, I did have a few of those people show up, but what surprised me was I also had doctors and attorneys and dentists and pastors and engineers and accountants. And I'm like, what are you guys doing here? And the response was, I'm doing okay. Everybody sees me as doing okay. And I am, but I don't think this is it. I think there's something more. I think I may be living out mom and dad's dreams, not my own. And it was in that space that I saw an opportunity to really help transformation, to help those people who had enough life experience to be able to ask the right questions, and then to figure out, how has God uniquely gifted me? And then what would that look like, not just on Sunday, but what would that look like on Monday morning if I really integrated that into the work that I did and was determined to have work that was purposeful, meaningful, and profitable? That's the space I've been in. I've written some books along the way, like 48 Days to the Work You Love, to kind of give people those guidelines how to do that. But that's what I do. Continue to have the pleasure of doing that today, to work with people and finding, who am I? How has God gifted me? What am I here for? And how can I blend that all together in meaningful work and play?
So it all started in that class at the church, all career transitions.
Yes.
Okay. Now that class, I'm just curious, just take us back there. Was that a 1-day class? Was this a multiple week type event? I mean, how was the structure of that?
It was just an ongoing Sunday school class. So it was in between sermons, some typical Sunday morning, early service, then Sunday school class, and then late service. And a couple of things happened really quickly. For one, my wife and I never got to go to church because we were used to going to the second service. But in teaching that class, we'd have, people stand at the back of the room at the end of the class with individual questions. Gee, and then that spilled over into the week. Can I get together with you, Dan? Or wow, then it was, I've got a son-in-law who's been without work for 2 months. He needs to hear what you just taught us. What do you have that I can give him? And I didn't have anything. And being the son of a pastor, I never in my wildest dreams expected what I was doing in church as ministry to be part of my income generation.
Yeah.
But the needs were so great. And when it got to be where I was spending 20, 30 hours a week outside of Sunday school class, working with people, my wife suggested, you're spending a whole lot of time doing this. If you're going to spend that much time, it seems it ought to have something to do with our own provision. And I very gently opened the door into that to have things that were available, resources, both my own coaching and resources that people could take with them. And that really opened the floodgates, and it's just never stopped.
And that was kind of where I was hoping you would go, because I know there's guys listening that, they want to do the work, but, they're not sure how to take that next step, and to get it going. So for you, was the coaching the natural place to get started? And that where you kind of point people to?
It very much was. I mean, that was in essence the low-hanging fruit. To develop. Well, here's what happened. Coaching was what people wanted, my individual time. And that's what I thought that I had a value that I could offer them. Incidentally, we moved that Sunday school class from a Sunday school class because it was just unwieldy trying to squeeze it in between sermons. We moved it to a Monday night, 2 hours uninterrupted in a separate building on the church campus, but in a separate building from the sanctuary. And I did that for 8 years. That really is where my business had the foundation and where it grew. But then in that period of time, people were asking for content. And I finally, just because of the request, put together just my rough Sunday school notes in a 3-ring binder, had a little cassette in there at the time, and people started buying that. And so I said, well, might as well make it available to more people than just the ones coming to the class as well. So we started experimenting in the early days of online marketing on the internet. I went to a workshop that Mark Victor Hansen was doing in Los Angeles. Mark Victor Hansen being co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. I thought, well, this guy knows how to sell things that have value to people. I had to go listen to him. And I tapped my buddy Dave Ramsey on the shoulder. That was in the early days for Dave as well. And I said, hey, let's go to this thing. So we did. We took our wives, Sharon and Joanne went with us. We sat there, listened to this gracious, generous gentleman talk about how he sold his books and other materials. And I came back, and in the next 30 months, Chris, I sold over $2 million worth of that little 3-ring binder that I was selling. And it was just amazing how that took off, just using some simple online marketing principles. And we were giving people real hope and encouragement, offering them a money-back guarantee. If you don't get the work you love in 48 days, we'll give you your money back. I mean, we tried to really be generous in the same way that I was serving people in the Sunday school class. We just extended it beyond that. And people continued to buy and buy and buy. And then in order to leverage my time, whereas coaching is the low-hanging fruit, but with coaching, there's only so many hours in the day, so many days in the week.
It doesn't scale.
I started having products available, and then a workshop, then a seminar, and then live events. And then, we've gone to online communities, masterminds, just other ways to connect people and allow them to experience that core message in a variety of ways. And in the process, it's produced, a very profitable business and given me the kind of life that Joanne and I get to enjoy today.
What an amazing story. I mean, I think so many guys too, there's this thought process, Dan, around, if it's ministry, I'm supposed to be doing it for free.
Oh my.
So how do you get them past that?
Oh my, that was a difficult transition for me.
Okay.
I was raised, my grandparents were Amish, horse and buggy Amish, no plumbing, no electricity. Then my parents were conservative Mennonite. So we were very, very legalistic, very conservative. But of course, my dad as a pastor was not paid. You would never think of being paid for your ministry. You figure out something else to do to feed your family, but certainly not that. So that was my background. That was my heritage. So when I was confronted with this, and I still had a lot of those same roots of belief, well, this is my ministry. Yeah, it would be horrible to charge for this. I really struggled with that, just theologically. How could I possibly charge for what I was doing there? And I got a lot of good counsel, good coaching in that transition, but that was not an easy step for me at all. But here's what happened. And I suspected that when I went from just being the nice guy at church who was available for all the coaching that you could possibly want to charging for that, I'd be seen as some, greedy capitalist who was no longer honoring God in his service gift. It was exactly the opposite. It was like the floodgates opened when I did that. Because then, think about it. If you're an attorney, making $400,000 a year, you don't put a lot of value on just some nice kid at church who's willing to talk to you. But if somebody positions themselves as a professional coach and has fees connected with their services, it elevates the credibility. It elevates the value of that. It also increases the likelihood that the person will implement what they're being told, what they're being encouraged to do. So it's, in as much as it almost seems counterintuitive, no, if people have skin in the game, they take it more seriously. They show up. Yes. My wife was astounded because she was setting appointments for me back in those days. When I was making that transition, and I still had a lot of people who I was just seeing for free because they were parts of that class. And then, but we were also getting a lot of contact. Moving that class from Sunday school class to Monday night meant that a lot of people from the community came. So we would have those dentists, chiropractors, and attorneys, sitting in the back of the room on Monday night, and then they'd call on Tuesday morning, when can I get in to see Dan? She would book them, and she would see that, 99% of our no-shows, 90% of people who didn't implement, 90% of the people who were in the same place 6 months from now that they were today, were the people that I was seeing for free. That wasn't true of the people who were paying. People who were paying expected to be guided, directed, given a plan, and implement it. Otherwise, it would be poor stewardship on their part to have invested the money. But it really was eye-opening for me to see that, and it's given me an opportunity to really work with lots of people since then who want to be in ministry, but struggle with this same issue. You can
Mhm.
be in ministry. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I certainly, my business today is just an ordinary for-profit business, but
Mhm.
people refer to it all the time. Dan, thank you so much for your ministry. Dan, your ministry has changed my life. Dan, your ministry is just blessing a lot of, that's how they refer to it. If you're
Right.
doing kingdom work in your business, in your job, people will see it as such, no matter how it's categorized legally in terms of tax structure. I never had any desire to start a nonprofit because of the work I was always. No, it's just a legitimate business. And people pay for the books, the courses, the events, the masterminds, the opportunity to engage with the material, even though it's exactly the same thing I was teaching in that Sunday school class.
Isn't that awesome though? That once put ultimately you put a value on your time and how the people responded, and then how God blessed that. Once you put the value on your time, and I don't think we do that enough.
We don't. And people think it's an either or, either you really serve just from an open hand, you just serve, or you charge. And then you are tempted, with being greedy and self-serving and materialistic. See, that was the kind of theology I grew up in. I mean, we were extremely poor and frankly, pretty proud of it because that's a sign that you're really serving God, to have nothing, to just be poor. But now, one of the things that I use, and if you're watching on video, you can see behind me here in my shelf, there's a silver goblet. That's very significant. Every member of my mastermind has that. It's a really core principle for our mastermind, and that is that we serve best from a full cup. It comes from
Okay.
a Jewish ceremony called the Havdalah, which is the evening of the Sabbath, whereby the dad, the father in the family, has this goblet. It's the only time where a goblet is on top of a saucer in Jewish ceremony. But he pours
Mm-hmm.
wine into the goblet. He pours until it's full and continues pouring. Symbolically, what
Mm-hmm.
it means is we're going to go into the marketplace. We're going to do what we do with such excellence that we fill our cup. We fill the needs that our family has, and we do more than that. And from that abundance, we can give generously. That's a
Right.
very different principle than what I see a lot of Christians trying to live out, thinking that they're most godly and having nothing. It's hard to be a big force for change. It's hard to give generously. It's hard to change things dramatically when you have nothing, when your cup is empty. So that full cup is a principle that I live by and certainly encourage other people to understand the principle behind that.
I love it. Hey, we want to take a quick break. How many of you guys can recite all the lines of Sweet Home Alabama without breathing hard? But when it comes to recalling God's word, you get stuck. To help you out, we identify 10 scriptures you need to fight like a lion and a plan to help you get them cemented in your heart. So grab this free resource, and I'm going to come alongside of you in a series of personal and engaging messages designed to challenge and help you grow. So get equipped today with a scripture that will help you fight the battle you are in. Visit thelionwithin.us to get started today. That's thelionwithin.us to unlock this free guide you need to fight like a lion. Now, Dan, on that, from an abundance standpoint, there is a book I read, and I think I read it from part of following Dave and stuff. And it's Thou Shalt Prosper. And I think that came, what you just went through, that whole ceremony was a part of that book. And I cannot remember the author, but
Daniel Lappin.
that Daniel Lappin. That's
That's
right. So
exactly where that came from.
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm on the right path then.
That's exactly where it came from. Rabbi Daniel Lappin and Thou Shalt Prosper. It's the most profound book on biblical principles for finances that I've ever read.
Yeah, because you're right, though. So many times we think from a ministry standpoint, we never think about our cup. We're always thinking about other cups. But if we can get our cup full and the blessing overflows, then we can do the kingdom work.
That's
and
right.
really make an impact.
That's right. Yeah. My wife and I just recently made the largest gift that we've ever made in our lives. I mean, we would have never dreamed of being able to do that when we were young. But because of the principles that I just described, we were able to make a large gift to a counseling center that's building a new campus, and we sponsored part of that campus. But just as part of our legacy, because it's a place of hope and healing for people that we really believe in. But what an honor to be able to participate in that and provide a path for others. Absolutely.
I kind of want to go back to that Sunday school class. I know I feel like I'm beating that one to death, but this is an important part that guys don't miss it. Too many guys think you just want to put something together, you build it and you put it out and people should buy it, versus you did the quote unquote market research, directly with the people to find out what the need was. And then you built something to that, and maybe just share some more wisdom on how that process worked, because I think that's, we get that way too. And I've been guilty of that myself, of building stuff. Oh, I think it's going to be great. And nobody buys it, right?
It's funny because as I describe my business, I didn't sit down and map out a business. It really evolved around me. It showed up unexpectedly. I mean, I'm a salesperson. I can do okay, no matter what. And I was doing fine back then. But when this showed up and surprised me by its appearance, here's something where there's such a great need. People are willing to engage. People are willing to invest in the process. The opportunity's right there. I can't ignore that. I need to pay attention to that. And it really was other people, including my wife, who helped point it out and make me see that. But when I did, then one of the things that I've used as a business principle all these years is if three people ask me the same question, I develop a resource for them. So it's not a matter of me just sitting down, like you say, just creating something and then pushing it on people. No, everything that I've ever developed has been in response to people's inquiries. How can I do this? What should I do in this situation? So the books that I've written, and we have a really robust product suite. We just introduced a product 2 weeks ago that I had a lot of fun with because I happen to enjoy cars. Always have, always tinkered, always loved just flipping cars and driving nice cars. And people ask me, how I can do that. And I finally put together just a presentation on how to drive cars for free, drive any car you want for free. Well, it has to do with understanding the market and understanding that cars, if it's the right category of car, it hits what we call bottom cash value. So as opposed to most cars, you buy it and it's just a straight line depreciation down into the junkyard. Exotic cars, luxury cars don't do that. There are classes of luxury cars that at about 7 to 8 years, typically, if they have only about 30,000 miles on them, they hit a bottom cash value and can at that point actually increase. The curve comes back up. I've had a lot of cars like that, where I buy a car, we drive it, have fun with it, and a year later I sell it for more money than I paid for it. So that's the issue. But my point is, because people are asking me about that, we now have a course on car hacking. And we have tons of people who are buying that. I made it inexpensive, just our normal $48. But what that means is there was something that people were asking me about. So I spent a couple hours, sat down and just put together the principles about how to do that, created a little video course on that. And now we've got something that makes money while I sleep. It's just serving people well, giving them what they were asking for. That's how I develop new content. That's how I develop groups. That's how I develop masterminds, whatever it is. It's because people were asking for it, and I just follow that path. That's worked extremely well for me. I don't do a lot of just thinking up something and then hoping that people are going to want it once it's here. I'm very simple in the model that I've used in business. It's worked extremely well for me.
That's beautiful. And I need to take that course. That's interesting. You have, we talk about wealth a lot on the line within us. So we talk about debt and trying to get, we want to get that out of our lives. But the whole car hacking, we have not talked about. So that is very interesting.
Wow. Well, as you know, one of the biggest expenses that people have is a car payment. It's typically mortgage and a car payment. But I've had a whole lot of cars, a whole lot of really nice cars. I've never had a car payment in my life. That's just an easy principle when you're doing the way that I approach it. Because in essence, I don't really have real money in a car. If I buy it, increase the money I had initially. It doesn't take too long until it's like going to the casino. You put in $20, you hit a good roll, you get $40 back. You put the 20 back in your pocket. Then you're just playing with house money. I'm just
Right.
playing with house money in the cars that I drive because it's money that was created from the cars themselves. That's a
Yeah.
big issue. That can be a big game changer for people in how they see that as just a dead expense. Now, if you're driving
Yes.
an hour to work every day, 5 days a week, I mean, that's going to be different. I mean, I don't use cars
Right.
like that. Have my own business. I mean,
Right.
I drive a black Corvette right now. Well, I don't put 3,000 miles a year on it. What that means is that car's going up in value every single day that I have it, just without
Right.
question.
Right. Well, you got our interest, so I'm gonna try to go. I'm gonna go get the link to this course. We're gonna put it in the show notes for
All
our
right.
listeners out there, and hopefully you'll get a bump out of that course because I'll tell you what, that's amazing. I love that story. Very good, very well. So Dan, I'm curious too. You have the whole 48 days community, and I really want to take a chance for you because we have a lot of guys listening, and maybe they want to be that entrepreneur, and they're trying to figure out how you can do more monetization out of the stuff that they love. Maybe just unpack that a little bit, the 48 days community, how you try to serve others and the value you bring there, because I've got a lot of value out of it. They hear me talk all the time. I'd rather them hear it from you directly.
Well, thanks. Sure. I'll tell you a little bit about the community. Then I want to tell you a little bit about the backstory, because again, it
Okay.
speaks to God's preparation and God's providence. But we have an online community where people come together, people who know there's something more. They may have an idea that's been kind of dormant. And they want to really bring it to life, put legs on it. And so it's $48 a month. So it's a low commitment, but people come together and then they share ideas and resources. And what happens is, because we give people the community, many times there's a question asked. And before I get a chance to even see it, there's 10 people who have responded to it, whose wisdom in that area surpasses my own. So it's not just, gee, everybody wants to know what Dan knows. Not at all. It's a community where people show their leadership, show their expertise. We now have 7 different deans in that community where people have shown their leadership in certain areas. So dean of coaching, dean of speaking, dean of podcasting, dean of mindset, people like that. We have deans in there who then run their own programs under that umbrella where people can participate as being members. And so it functions, it takes on a life of its own. It's really, in many ways, it functions like a healthy church should function, where it's not just the guy at the top, but as people have taken on positions of responsibility and leadership, encourage each other, support each other. And that's how it works. Now, let me give you a little bit of the backstory on that.
Okay.
So years ago, we had property actually just 2 years ago, we had a property in Tennessee. And that property in Tennessee, we had our house, and then we were able to purchase the property that adjoined ours, and it had this beautiful old barn on it. So I thought, wow, it'd be fun to do something creative with that barn. So we did a light modification on the barn and created an event center where we could have 60 people at a time come in. So we would have events there. 7 events during the course of a year. We had coaching with excellence, innovate, how to take an idea and really develop it, and write to the bank, WRITE, how to take your writing. Because again, people were asking me, how did you, as a Christian, with your writing, get New York Times best-selling books? How have you sold the books? And so when multiple people asked me that, instead of just giving them a quick overview, I said, why don't we have an event where people could come? And I just spend 2 days just telling them exactly what I did to get my writing out there like I've been able to do. So we were doing those events there. After doing that for 12 years, the county that we lived in Franklin, Tennessee, showed up one day, says, you can't have live events on this property. That's a codes violation. I'm like, what are you talking about? We're out in the country. There's no neighbors close by. I've been doing this. We've been very open about it. I'm not hiding it. No, you can't do that here. And it became a very, very sticky situation, and it's closed us down. So that was 5 years ago at this point, 5 years ago. That took a big chunk. People were paying $1,000 each to come to those events. We'd have 60 people there. at an event. We did that 7 times a year. You can do the math on that. It was a significant chunk of income for a little business. And we were no longer able to do that. So I thought, well, what could we do? What could we do to allow people to continue to share ideas and resources, to encourage each other, to come together, to kind of link arms, and maybe even over a period of time rather than just 2 days together? And we explored the idea of an online community. So we started that. We started that in 2017. We started that, which is now the 48 Days Eagles, where people were there. Well, guess what happened? A couple of years later, all of a sudden, here we come along with COVID. The people who had planned live events were forced to close them down. They were in a panic.
Yes.
We were setting pretty because we had initiated 2 years prior this online community. It fit beautifully and was fueled by what happened with COVID, by people looking for community, looking for places where they could connect with others who would share ideas and resources and encourage them. We were positioned beautifully. And by that time, incidentally, we had enough members at paying the $48 a month that it superseded the money we were making from those live events. And instead of being something that required a lot of intense work, it just rolls on its own. It's very easy to maintain because the people are so gracious and generous in how they serve each other. And we were setting beautifully and continue to grow in that area. But, it's one of those things that when the county showed up, I mean, it seemed like a disaster. How in the world can we have that taken away from us? But at those times, I've learned to, rather than just panic, and just to take a deep breath and say, what does this make possible? I really learned that from Michael Hyatt's wife, Gail. What does this make possible? And so just to see it in that vein, okay, we're going to look at the possibilities rather than looking at the loss of what happened. We're going to anticipate the future. What could we do differently that's not being done? That's served me well again and again and again, and certainly in that transition. So now we have this beautiful online community, and a lot of things have happened that have been unfortunate for businesses and certainly for people having live events. And we've not only coasted through, but we've grown exponentially in that period of time.
That is amazing. But I mean, just that outlook of what does this make possible? What a great way to view it. Because when the trials come in life and they hit us, we sometimes we just get in the fetal position, or woe is me, and then we just get anger and rage. But you turned it into, where's the opportunity at?
Right.
And that's a big mind shift.
It is. And it's very similar to working with people individually, as I've had the pleasure of doing now for many years. But when somebody loses their job or business fails, the first response is, oh my goodness, we aren't going to go on vacation this year. We're going to have to pull our kids out of Christian school. We're going to have to turn back in the cars we've got. They think immediately less. We're going to be forced to have less. And yet what happens is, it's not uncommon at all. 18 months later, I talked to that person. They say, you know what? That was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to look at things that I was too blind to see prior to that. But under that pressure of the unexpected change, I saw things that I hadn't seen before. And now I'm living more fulfilled. I'm making more money than I ever made. We have more blessings to share with other people, all those things. But it's interesting how our initial response always is, this is a bad thing. And it's not uncommon and unexpected, but if we really just take that breath, what does this make possible? We start to see possibilities that we may not have recognized that were available to us all the time.
I love it. Hey, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back, guys.
Think about the amount of emails you guys get in a day. Now, how many of those are junk? If your inbox is like mine, it gets hammered with items that do not serve me, and I'm constantly pruning it down. To combat the darkness that consumes it, we want to partner with you and bring some light. So join the Lion's Den to be part of our community and get positivity delivered to you directly. We're working hard to bring encouragement, inspiration, and tips to help you be the leader you're predestined to be. As part of the Lion's Den, you'll also be first in line with new opportunities, events, and resources that are designed to serve you in your journey. So hop over to thelionwithin.us and sign up for the Lion's Den today. It's free. That's thelionwithin.us and become a the Lion's Den today.
So, Dan, one thing that you've mentioned a couple of times, and I was trying to take notes as you went, I think you said it was 8 years you did that Sunday school class, and then it was 12 years on that on-site events that you were hosting. But what I take away from that is none of this stuff was overnight. And I think so many guys, in particular men, we're not patient. That's a fruit that we don't have in our lives. Patience is not one of them. We want to have that success immediate. So what advice would you have to that guy who's out there who wants to do ministry and monetization, but he wants to see that monetization happen quick, right? We want it to happen now versus the putting in the reps. So just curious for your take and advice on that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I have seen the longer perspective, and sometimes I cringe at telling people those time frames that I went through, because I don't want people to expect that it's going to take 8 years or 12 years to have success. And I think we've got, technology tools today that we didn't have a few years ago that make things quicker as possibilities. But I do think that sometimes we try to force it so much so that we kind of question the validity of what we're doing. We have to recognize that this is not something you can cram down people's throats. You can do fancy, marketing these days to get it out there to a lot of people, but so much of it comes down to relationships, nurturing relationships. If you want to have a business that grows, you have to build relationships. That doesn't happen overnight. You can't go to one conference or one Chamber of Commerce meeting and come away with 30 close friends. It just has to happen over time. I have a list of people on my 3 a.m. list, and I encourage people to do that. Your guys, your listeners, 3 a.m. list. Who could you call at 3 a.m. who you have such a relationship with that if you really were stuck, let's say that you needed $10,000, that the person would not only pray for you, but would actually respond to the needs you had without a whole lot of question. How many people do you have on that list? Now, what I encourage people is to have on that list as many people as you are years of age. So if you're 40 years old, you ought to have 40 people on that list. If you're 55, it encourages you to keep building on that list. But I mentioned earlier that, Dave Ramsey and I went to a seminar. Dave and I have been friends for a very long time. Almost 35 years at this point. Dave is the number one person on that list of mine. Now, there's a lot of other people on there. We've had a relationship for a lot of years, grew together through tough times. So it wasn't all just people that you connect with when you're at your pinnacle of success. No, people who you've really walked through life with. But if you have the relationships, then your success can multiply really quickly. I have a new book coming out, Chris, titled An Understanding Heart. When that comes out, I have no book launch planned at all. I don't have any big release date. I'm not going to try to hit, any kind of list that authors sometimes do. I'm doing everything backward from what you traditionally seen done. But you know what I am going to do? As soon as I get that, I'm going to send it out in a gift box to 300 people. That's my marketing plan.
Okay.
Now that's it. So what does that mean? That means if those people who know me and love me, if they think it has value, what are they going to do? They're going to share it with people. That is such a different thing than, spending 30 grand on Facebook ads to blast it out there to people that may have never heard of me and try to somehow manipulate and con them into buying a book that they know nothing about. It just doesn't fit me at all. Now, because of what I just described, obviously I've been building those relationships over a long period of time.
Right.
And again, it doesn't mean that it takes you 30 years to build a list that's meaningful, but no matter where you are, make that a priority. That's the power. That's the value of my business today. It's not fancy technology in place. It's not all kinds of systems, that surprise people when they show up. No, it's the relationships that I have. That's what allows me to be a very lean entrepreneurial business and yet have a lot of influence out there because I'm connected to a lot of people who also have influence and have audiences, I can borrow the influence of other people instantaneously without any question. I can just open my hand. The relationships are already there. If I want to get on podcast, if I want to have people promote something, and then, and of course, the reverse is true as well. My goodness, I just had somebody send me a copy of his new book, and I immediately ordered 35 copies. Paid for them. I didn't ask him, "Gee, give them to me," because I paid for them because I want to support him. And then I sent them to people that I know can really benefit from that book. But that's what people do who are successful in business. You're not in a silo. Even if you're an entrepreneur, even if you're a solopreneur, you're never successful alone. It always comes as a result of connections you have with other people.
Oh, the relationships are so key. I mean, it's so key. I mean, and the way that you also, you send it to those 300 people because you've developed that trust over the years. And we talked about, I think we had an episode, it was early in the line within us, and we talked about building your lines den. And that's the 3 a.m. guys. That's who that you were talking about. Who the 3 a.m. guys, who are they in your life? Now, the challenge you have about having one for every year of your life, that hit me hard. Like, okay, I need to get that list shored up a little bit more. But that's a great tip, though. I mean, that's really great because you want to have those types of men in your life or relationships in your life, rather, that's going to be able to help you in those moments. But also at the same time, you always need to have a generous heart and a giving heart. Because that's what I told people when I was talking to you. I was like, what threw me off about the first time we met, Dan, was just how generous you were. We're a small podcast. We're getting started. We're in our first year, but I felt like you treated me like you were talking to Dave. I felt that, and I think that comes across, and that is why people resonate with you because that generosity and the vulnerability, just your genuineness.
Well, I appreciate that. I take that seriously as a compliment and also as a responsibility. I see people who try to build reputation, try to build relationships, and then in an instant destroy their character, integrity, reputation. I think, oh my goodness, how can you recapture what it took years to establish? How can you recapture that? And it breaks my heart when I see that. Incidentally, in my 3 a.m. list, I currently have 101 people in there. And I'm not 101 years old yet, but I'm giving myself a little head start for where I am. Yeah. But I just take very seriously. I mean, people don't get added on there frequently, but if I see that a relationship has developed, and to that extent, then they're certainly added on there. And those people, I don't announce that to those people. There are people on there who have no idea they're on my 3 a.m. list, but I am very confident that they deserve a place on there because we do have that kind of relationship.
I love it. Great advice. Now, I am an engineer, so I got one more question here that I'd like to get your take on because I think processes. But so picture a Venn diagram, and because I got your book right here, it says to the work and life you have. So a lot of guys, they have this circle of work, and they have this circle of life, and it's somewhere maybe a little sliver the circles connect. Mm-hmm. But you, from the things that I've learned and studied from you, the circles really almost lay over top of each other because if you're doing the work that you love, I mean, it all kind of comes together. So what advice, well, if you're the guy who's listening right now, who is on his way to work and he's miserable and he's trying to figure out how do we actually bring these two pieces together to have a work and a life that you love, what are you telling them?
If you really look inward first, which is my encouragement, too often we look outside when it comes to career, business, or income generation. Gee, I know somebody who's killing it, on Amazon with what they're doing. Or this guy started a landscaping business. I'm going to try to do the same. We have to be careful about those external situations. 85% of the process of having a confidence of proper direction comes from looking inward first. What has God already told you about yourself? What are your skills and abilities? What are your personality tendencies? How do you relate to other people? What kind of environments you're most energized by? What are your ongoing, recurring values, dreams, and passions? From those, you can get a clear focus. Then you have 15% left. Then that is, how can you blend those in work that you're doing on Monday morning? If you do that, the work is going to feel a lot different than just, trudging off to the salt mines with your lunchbox. It's not going to feel like that at all. So as an example, so this coming Friday, I'm doing what I call food for thought with Dan.
Okay.
These are luncheons where people put in an application and I select 12 people at a time to come and have lunch with me here where I live in Osprey, Florida. There's no cost to them other than getting here. I'm not selling anything. I'm not promoting anything. It's just to get together and have lunch because I believe so much in nurturing new relationships with people that I maybe have not yet formed a deep relationship. So I do that. So I'm going to have lunch. I'll have on shorts and a shirt because it's warm here. And we go to our beautiful clubhouse and sit around and have a conversation. I have a couple real key questions that I ask of these people, but it's very informal. We go around and answer that and we leave. Now, you tell me, am I working or am I playing? I mean, it's hard to tell. Am I working? Yeah. Does it have some kind of a tangent benefit to my business? I'm sure that it does. I've seen that happen before. I have no agenda for what that looks like. I'm benefiting now from relationships that were established 10, 15 years ago. And I'm sure some of these will turn out to be the same thing. But I don't go in there with some kind of strategy. I'm going to turn these people into paying customers. I don't at all because I just trust the process. Would I do that with just, friends of mine from the community or friends from church? Sure. So it's very much the same kind of thing that I would just do with a group of friends anyway. I do a lot of things like that where there's not a real hard distinction between business and just things that I enjoy or my personal life. As a matter of fact, at this luncheon, because it's right here, my wife is going to join us and my daughter. Hey, come on down. We'll just have fun together. Yeah. So there's a lot of things like that I have built in. Now, not everybody has a business like mine, but I think no matter what you're doing, I mean, if you have a landscaping business, you can develop relationships with your customers like they've never experienced before with the people who take care of their lawn and flowers. If you're a roofing company, you can do the same thing. You can be known in your community for how you're involved like that. I have a friend who has physical therapy centers. He has over 400 physical therapy centers around the country. He lives here. Wonderful, wonderful, gracious Christian gentleman. And the things that he's able to do through those centers, sure. Is that his business? Sure. Sure. Does he make a lot of money? Sure. But the way that he treats people individually is just unlike what they're going to expect in other places. I think everybody has the opportunity to do that. I don't think it matters what it is you're doing. If it really is a good fit for you, it's also an opportunity to build relationships and to live out ministry, to be an example of stewardship. All those things we expect to do as godly men can be done in that business.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. Dan, let's take our last break and I have the final round for you. Okay.
All right.
Is your daily routine setting you up for success or failure? Each day is an opportunity to improve, and it starts with solid habits. We created a guide that outlines 9 powerful habits that will strengthen the physical, mental, and spiritual areas of your life. To get your free guide, check out the link in the show notes or hop over to thelionwithin.us/habits. That's thelionwithin.us/habits and start creating the habits you need to be the leader you're predestined to be.
And we always wrap up the Lion Within Us with what we call feeding time. Okay. So this is where we're going, it's quick fire, lightning round, but I'd love to get your insight. So we're not talking about what we've been talking about. This is more about just you personally. And love just to, if you're willing to play, we'll jump right in.
All right. I'm game.
All right. All right. So what's your favorite thing about God?
Wow. The first thing that came to mind was his compassion.
Compassion.
See, that's kind of a switch for me because when I was young, we feared God. He was somebody with a big stick.
Yeah.
And, fire breathing out of his mouth. Yeah. So that's a learned trait of God is his compassion.
What about the least favorite thing?
Oh. Least favorite thing are things that I think we've artificially superimposed on God.
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
I can't address anything that I think is a true characteristic of God that's not admirable.
That's right. That's right. How about something? What's something that you're struggling with right now that you're working on?
Um, I have multiple projects that are underway, and I continue to struggle with enough time. Now, I
Mm.
enjoy working, but it's not just a matter of I don't see the value in just saying I'm going to, go away for 3 weeks, just close the doors and work 100 hours a week to finish a book manuscript. That
Hmm.
impedes the process for me. The only way
Right.
I can write where it has value is to be living life as I'm writing, to be living a
Oh,
life that I think is commendable, to be living a life that I'm talking about. So I can't violate that in what I do. But that's a struggle. Like I've got 2 book manuscripts right now. I've got one book that's being printed in China as we speak, and 2 book manuscripts I'm working on. Sure, I'd like to have them finished by the end of the year. But realistically, I haven't given myself hard deadlines because I'm not sure it'll happen. But it's
sure.
that how to use time effectively. But I have so many things that I want to accomplish that it's hard to ever be content with what's being turned out.
It's tough. It's tough. So speaking of that time, what did you spend too much time doing over the last year?
Over the last year, I was actually dealing with the county in Franklin on that piece of property to resolve the
Okay.
code's issues. It was really emotionally draining to work with the bureaucrats, the attorneys, the
Hmm.
construction engineers, and all that had to be done. I felt like it was a poor stewardship of time, but there was an
Mm.
end goal in sight that I thought I could accomplish that defied what everybody said could be done, but I thought I could accomplish it. And so I
Hmm.
leaned into it, even though it was frustrating. But I
Right.
did accomplish that. It was resolved beautifully. I was rewarded in a big way financially because of working that through. We then sold the property, but it was not a process that I enjoyed going through it. It was a means to
Understood.
an end.
Understood. So, a couple more questions. What are you most afraid of?
What I'm most afraid of. Wow, that's a kind of a novel idea because I'm not fearful. I'm not, I had just last week, I had a company send me a product. I won't mention the name, but it's one of these brain energizers that they send out. And I took it and it actually had an adverse effect on me because it made me lightheaded and dizzy, whereas it's
Oh,
supposed
wow.
to. But what it's intended, I worked with my doctor, my nutritionist, to unpack it. The ingredients, he said, were wonderful, but the ingredients were intended to reduce stress and anxiety. I don't have stress and anxiety. So the effect on me was not a positive one, which is really
Oh,
interesting because I'm not fearful. I'm not worried about who's in the White House. I'm not worried about what the economy is doing. I'm not worried about inflation rates or the housing bubble. I really don't have any fears. I'm about as fear free as anybody I know. I can't think of anything that I fear.
well, well, I love it. I love it. That's the goal for me right there. So, last two questions. What's a new habit that you want to create this year?
I just this week started a spin class, which
Really?
is new
Okay.
for me. I love to walk and I do work out on fitness machines 3 times a
Yeah.
week.
Oh,
But
spin is awesome.
well, I've got this little thing around my midsection that I don't like. And in working with my fitness coach, she said the best thing for that is a spin class, high cardio workout. So I just
Yeah.
started that and I'm going to continue that and plan to continue it indefinitely, not just till I, you know, reduce a few pounds, which I'm sure I can do, but beyond that,
Well,
spin class.
enjoy
Yep.
it. Get you some those click in shoes too, because they make all the difference in the world in the spin class.
I was told that. I
Yes.
used to have the
Yes.
bicycle shoes, but I don't currently because I ride a different kind of bike. But I
Yep.
may have to get those again. All right.
It'll change your spin class dramatically. So
Oh,
I won't go to one without that. It's been a while since I've been to a spin class, but I love them. I do a bike every day here. So yeah. So
awesome.
the last question for you, Dan. What's the one thing you hope that the guys out there listening remember from our conversation?
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty easy for me. And it's this because I work with people in so many different situations. But it's this It's never too late to have a new beginning. So many people, I mean, I talk to 27-year-olds who say, gee, I went to law school and now I realized it's not a good fit for me. And they imply that now they're stuck. They're just going to coast in the grave. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You aren't old enough to ask the right questions yet. Don't worry about it. Go on to something else. And
Right.
then, I talked to somebody who, just this last week, I talked to somebody who's 58 years old and was just let go from their position, a long-time position with the company. He thought he's not old enough to retire. But he's like, wow, what's next? How could I ever do something significant? 58, go into your second career, whatever. Figure things out. If you really take a fresh look, how God has gifted you and figure out what that could look in terms of work that's meaningful, purposeful, and profitable, you can go into the most productive 2 decades of your life.
Love it. Love it. Well, Dan, where do you want people to go? We'll sync up everything, but if you want to share where you like people to go, connect with you, learn from you, just want to give you a chance to share that.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, 48 Days is our brand that came out of that Sunday school material early on because I got frustrated working with people where we'd map out a plan for change that they said they wanted, and then I'd see them a year later and they hadn't done anything. And I thought, well, that's nuts. You know what? Well, I'm waiting until I pay off the student loan debt. I'm waiting until my kids get out of high school. There's always something you're waiting on. I decided there needed to be a time frame in which people could go through it. And I wanted something unusual, not just 30, 60, 90, 180, just common numbers, 48. And It has worked magic for me. But so that's our brand, 48 Days. Go there. It's easy to find. There's lots of resources. People can find my podcast or resources, some of the things that we've talked about here, the Eagles community. Just go to 48days.com.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, we'll make sure all that stuff is synced up for you listeners out there. So anything else you'd like to share today?
Well, I think we've covered a lot of territory, Chris. Loved the conversation.
This was an absolute thrill, Dan. Thank you so much for joining the line within us.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I hope we've stimulated some thinking out there, wiped away some cobwebs, and given some people some inspiration to get in the game.
There you go. Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
You wouldn't jump in a boxing ring and expect to win without training, right? So why do you think you can win the battle against Satan without putting in the work? For the Christian man, it starts with knowing Scripture and your heart. To help you out and get started with your training, we created a free guide of 10 scriptures you need to fight like a lion. Go grab this free resource, and I'm going to come alongside of you in a series of personal and engaging messages designed to challenge and help you grow. So get equipped today with Scripture that will help you fight the battle you're in. Visit thelionwithin.us to get started today. That's thelionwithin.us to unlock this free guide you need to fight like a lion.
All right, guys. I told you, I warned you, this was going to be a great conversation. I'll tell you what, Dan Miller, unbelievable. So much wisdom, so much insight, so much discernment. I'm on a high right now from talking to Dan and from learning from him, the 48 Days community. Guys, ministry to monetization. Don't put yourself in a box. There's opportunities. There's opportunities for you to grow. People like Dan is how we learn. It's how we grow. They're the relationships. I'm just going back to my notes here. Relationships, those values, dreams, and passions. If you're stuck, if you feel stuck, you're not. There are opportunities in front of you. Lean into it. Never too late to have a new beginning. So it's just wonderful insight from Dan. And the question this week, again, are you doing the work that you were called to do? Because if you're not, and you feel like God's pulling at you, go to him in prayer. Go connect with wise brothers out there that can help guide you. Go connect with people like Dan and communities like that and learn. This is how you grow. This is how you figure this out. Build the relationships. Jesus, all about the relationships. Love God, love others, right? Build the relationships. And then get out there and serve the kingdom. So guys, I pray this conversation serves you well. I pray that you go back and listen to it again. This is one you really need to share out with your buddies. Go ahead and text it out to them. Send them an email, whatever makes it easy for you. Give us a rating and review. Guys, that makes a big difference. I encourage you, maybe consider being a donor for us. Jump on. Maybe you want to be a monthly donor to support the line within us, the things we're trying to do, the things we're trying to build to serve you. Go to thelionwithin.us. Join the Lion's Den. That's free. Jump on that. Check out the Bible study. Check out the 10 scriptures to fight like a lion, 9 habits every man needs. There are resources out there, guys, that we're building to serve you well, because we know that you're in a battle, but you're not in a battle alone. So, guys, thank you again for so much for taking the time to listen to The Lion Within Us. I pray that you have a great week. Come back on Friday for the Fun Friday, and get out there and unleash the lion within.